So today I am making a sweet short crust pastry, and I'm going to make a Manchester tart, and I'm going to make a frangipane slice. So the frangipane, I'm going to use this one, and Manchester tart, I'm going to use this one. So my method of rolling out my pastry and filling the case it's a little bit different to what they tell you in the cooking shows, where you put the pastry in, you make sure that it's all filling in the corners, and then you leave the excess pastry on until it's nearly cooked, and then you cut it all off afterwards because your pastry will shrink if you don't. Well, actually, my method of doing it cuts out all that problem, because when you're cutting off pastry that's already cooked, particularly if it hasn't got a filling in, the tendency is that as you try to cut it, the pastry cracks, and then when you put your filling in, it all leaks into the bottom. So this is a way of doing it that doesn't do that. So this sweet crust pastry that I've made, I started off with 400 grams of plain flour, and I put about 2 teaspoonfuls of icing sugar and about a tablespoon of ground almonds, 2 egg yolks, and water, and that was it. So this is my rolling pin. I'm just going to flour that lightly. Now, I haven't kneaded this pastry very much at all. I try not to handle my pastry if I can possibly avoid it. So I'm just going to roll this out, and I want it to be long and thin. So I'm going to start off by shaping it a little bit into the shape that I want. I'm going to move these out of the way for a minute, and then I'm going to roll this out. So I want this to be quite thin. So I start off by getting the length of the pastry first. So I'm not rolling it out too hard. That's about it. And then I'm going to turn it round, make sure it's not going to stick. And then I'm going to roll it out to the width that I need. Now, if this starts to stick at all, I'm just going to add a little bit of added flour. And check this again. So we're nearly there. I just want to put a little bit more length into it because it's got to come up the sides as well. So that should do. So I've already greased this with some butter, and now I'm going to put the pastry into the case. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to roll this gently. Now I'm going to roll this onto my tin, push the edges in. I'm just making sure it's gone right into the corners here, and that I haven't punctured it with my nails, which are reasonably short. Right, so that's it lined now. Now at this point, most people would put some baking parchment in with some baking beans and leave the pastry excess on the case. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut it off. I'm going to use the rolling pin to do it. And the way that I do it, I'm basically pushing the pastry in a little bit. So I put it at an angle and I roll it across like that. I'm going to do the same on this side. So always I'm pushing in towards the tin. That's the pastry off. And as you can see, it looks like it's sort of bellied a little bit in at the sides. Well, that's absolutely fine. That's what I want it to do. So now I'm going to put the baking parchment in. And normally if I'm making a frangipane, I don't actually bake this blind, but today I'm going to because I want this to be super crisp on the bottom. So I'm just going to cut the edges a little bit, just to get it to go into the corners. Now this pastry was chilled after I made it and before I rolled it. So these are the baking beans. So the next thing I'm going to do is put it back in the fridge for a little while, mainly because actually the oven's got a cake in there at the moment and it's not quite ready, and I'll need to lift the temperature a little bit as well before this goes in. And it'll give me time to roll out the rest of the pastry to fill my round dish, which I'm going to use to make my Manchester tart. So I'm going to stop the video here and we'll come back later and see what it looks like.